Okay, so we were beginning our recording here at the bottom of page 94, and it turned out my microphone wasn't working, so I had to start over again. But we didn't miss much. Basically, what we discussed is the fact that we need to make a couple of edits here, and we were figuring out that what file is this? Typically, when you see a listing like this, they will point you to the file name, and we actually have a clue here because the class is user. It really is associated with the user RB file. I also pointed out to people that if you click these GitHub links, you'll see that the author has all the code out there, and then also you can see the name of the file. The code that you need to copy is basically this little tidbit. So you need to add that comma plus the rest of it to the file. So you're going to be working on your user RB file, and then you're going to add to it this little directive that's going to be based upon the relationship, the one-to-many relationship with user, and then basically it's going to take all the many that it pulls back, and it's going to order things based on the published at date descending, meaning newest stuff will be listed first. So go ahead and save your change. Now the other thing that they want us to add is a revision to that, and notice the different syntax here. So basically what's going to happen is we're adjusting it. Notice that we're changing from this syntax and we're adding another parameter to it. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and copy all of this. How about everything inside those curly brackets? And you see how that's different than what I have here. So what they're trying to point out is that the syntax is slightly different, but still in essence does the same thing. So notice published at descending, then we're going to do published at descending and the title ascending, using basically SQL syntax here. Now that looks a little bit different than what I have, doesn't it? So it seems to me like when I did my copy paste before, it didn't really copy paste all so well. It certainly didn't get that symbol in there. All right, go ahead and save your changes. You don't want to lose them. The other thing that you can add to this is a dependency. And you can see how it's just appended right onto the end of the statement. There's a comma in between. And I'm not sure if I copied the comma, apparently not. There's a comma right there. Go ahead and save. And really, part of the point of doing this, remember we talked about the dependency and the destroy? So things that are dependent on each other to exist will have a little association with the destroy approach. So in other words, if I have a user and he's created a bunch of articles and I get rid of the user, do we destroy all the articles? You see what's happening there? Now, kind of to work around that, you change that last keyword to nullify, because you don't necessarily want to delete the articles just because the user's no longer on the system, right? Because the articles might still be something you want to keep. So that's a different approach. But if I wanted to destroy the articles, that's what I would do. But remove the user, you would destroy the articles. Here, the dependency would just basically nullify the association. Next little level of interaction, we're going to be moving into basically the many-to-many associations that you guys know from database. Look at the weird syntax that comes with this one, though. This one is has and belongs to many. They have a little chart here kind of showing some of the more complicated associations that could arise, where you have an article table, and the articles, they're trying to tie them in. You see from articles, they're trying to tie into categories. So what they're trying to do is say that articles will fit into particular categories, but in order to associate the two, that we have this thing in the middle that's basically going to buffer it so that we can have a many-to-many relationship. So in other words, I could write an article, let's say about sports, but that article is also about the weather because the weather affects the sports, so that would fall into two categories. So how do you make that association? You do it with a many-to-many relationship, and then in the middle there you can see we have kind of like the bridge between the two so that you can link them. That's really kind of the point there. So we're going to do a little bit of stuff at the regular command prompt now. So let's copy that, and I had two of them open before, and I think, okay, this is the interactive Ruby prompt, and this is my regular C prompt. This is the one I want right now. So I'm going to paste in my command, and notice what it's going to do. It's going to generate a model, so it's going to create something from scratch, and the model is going to be called category, and it's going to have a field called name, which is a string, just with that one command. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, created a migration file. We created a model file, created test files. Everything works. Next thing that we're going to do is, now that we've created a model, is we actually have to do this migration thing. So notice the migration is going to be called create articles category. So we're going to get a timestamp, and it's going to get this name. Let's go ahead, generate the migration. All right, and there's the Ruby file it created. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at that Ruby file. So go there in your file structure. So go to the root of your blog, go to database, go to migrate, create articles category. That's the last file that we created. And let's open that. Now our objective here is to get the code in that file to match up with what's in the book here. So the part that we do have already is we do have the create table articles categories, but notice that they're adding a little bit of something to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy all the code that's in the middle of that class, and then I'm going to paste it in. Oop. Well, obviously that didn't paste too well. Let's copy that. Let's try it again. All right. Looks like we have a little bit of indenting to do here. and I don't want to do it with the tab. Should be 2 spaces in for each level. I'm concerned I might have a problem here. Let's just make sure. Okay, I see. So these two really should be indented one more level, like that. Right, so if you have all that typed in, go ahead and save it. Now, what's going on here is every time we do a create table, we're going to be working with the articles category table that's basically in between. That's the one that kind of bridges. And it's looking for an ID, but it's setting it to false. And then it puts in the little references. Now, references are the things that allow those connections to kind of basically flow through. So it's referencing article and it's referencing category. And then it's throwing in this thing here. It says self down, drop table, articles categories. So the question is, what is that part doing? So really what it does is it creates that table in between, and it does that for us on the fly and populates it. So the next thing we have to do, of course, to make all of this work, that we've changed our Ruby files, migration file is created. We do now need to run rakedb migrate, and that'll go through those migration files and build out any stuff that is needed. So when we go back to our database now and take a look, we go to structure first. So notice now we have an articles thing that we had before. We have an articles categories, which we just created, and we have categories. And then of course if we were to take a look at categories, you can see the fields. When you look at article categories, you can see all it has in there are these 2 simple pieces of information. The whole point of this table is to basically act as a bridge between the other tables, kind of creating that link. Now we have to forge the relationships within the Ruby files. So we're going to go to app models article. So we go to the root, we go to app models article, and I might already have that one open. Actually, we can leave it right there. And what we need to do here is make a little bit of a change. So we already have belongs to user, but now we have to add the many-to-many relationship part, which is this piece. So we belongs to user, and we has and belongs to many categories. So this is relative to article. So this is a little weird too, right? Because article, that's the one, object or table or whatever you want to think of it as. That's article. And this here is saying that it's a many-to-many relationship with the categories table. Go ahead and save this. We also want to go look at the category file, as you would anticipate. And then inside here, we're going to add the same thing. But that's going to actually see not categories, but articles, obviously, right? Save it. So we have those files built. Now, keep in mind that those files really, that forms that connection again. Now, because it's that many-to-many, you have to do that has and belongs to, that has to all be put together on both sides in both of the files that are associated with it, not just the one. All right, the other thing that we want to do here, this is a new technique as well. And we're going to get to the point where we're going to be running what they call, instead of DB migrate, we're going to run DB seed. And this is a real common thing to do with MVC as well, because you have everything all built, then you can start pumping or forcing information into the file manually. So what we're going to do is we're first going to go ahead and we're going to get a seeds file. So we're going to go to our database folder, we're going to blog, DB. You can see we have a seeds file. Let's go ahead and open it. And notice this is blank, but they're giving you some information in there. You don't need to keep that stuff in there. That can all go away. And I recommend that you just delete it. And then we're going to copy this and put it into that file. I think it's a very good idea to try to keep the indenting similar. I mean, you really don't have to. But it does make it look nicer. So take a look at the syntax. This should look familiar. Variable. The variable is going to hold a user that we are creating with a particular email address and password. So we're creating a new user right here is what we're doing. And then additionally, we are going to throw data into the category table. So we're going to create all these different categories. Now if you remember what we were doing before, maybe you don't, because I vaguely do. If you look under categories, you're going to see the fields that are available are the ID, the name, and then the timestamps that are automatic. ID is automatic. Really, this whole table is about creating category names. That's all it's about. So this file, the seeds file, allows us to do a lot of different things. We can really pump a lot of data into tables directly using this particular tool. So now the next step here is going to be to actually run the seed. So we're going to seed the database. So come back over to your regular prompt, your regular C prompt, and run rake db seed. And what that does is it goes into that seed file, runs the code, and executes it as if you were sitting at the prompt typing it in. And it should be in there now. So if we go back to the database again, and we do a refresh, you can see that all those things got pushed in there. So a real common thing to do when people are building MVC applications is they'll work with like minimal sample data. They'll create a couple things like we've been doing, but then when it actually gets time to like do production work, and you're actually, what stuff is going to go in, you create these seed files that basically can push all the data in, just kind of like you probably have done, where you load like SQL scripts in, and then you execute them, and it drops right into a MySQL database or a SQL Server database. Same principle, but this is done through seeding. All right, once again, we're going to run a series of commands here, and this is basically to see how things are working. So I'm going to copy the first one. These need to be at the interactive Ruby prompt, so it'll go to this screen. And we'll paste in the first one. So this one says article equals article.last. So we're taking the last article, we're storing it in memory. Next command, creating a variable called category. What are we going to put in it? The results of finding my name programming. So we're looking for a category with the name programming. Next command is an interesting one. It's got that double pointer in there again. So we know what article is. Article is the last article. See that? Categories is going to receive category. So category is the one that we just populated here. It went in, it found the category named programming, stored it in the variable. Now we're going to take that category and we're going to add it to the article. So the last article is now going to have the category of programming. And I got an error. So you guys are cheering because you got an error too? That's what you get for racing ahead. All right, let's see if we can figure out why we're getting the error. It says no method error, undefined method categories. All right, so it's not so apparently we got a little problem here. It's thinking that categories is a method, which it's not. So now the question is, if this is wrong, if categories is wrong, what is right? Now, part of the answer of that is you're going to find by kind of looking backwards at some of the stuff that we did, basically looking at the stuff that was similar that we just did. So if we go back, now we have to go pretty far back, I guess. So if you remember what we were doing here, I mean, regardless of what's happening in the aftermath, right? We're still taking something and we're placing it into that association. So what I'm thinking is a possibility here, one thing I should check, absolutely, is that all my files are saved. Well, the seeds file, that's not really so important. Category file has and belongs to many articles. That's good. The article file has and belongs to many categories. That's good. Okay, so I was concerned that maybe these were not put in correctly, but that's not the case. So these two seem to be okay. These other ones are irrelevant to what we're doing. And I don't see any other issues there. And you see what I'm doing here. My process is I'm just going through and I'm making sure that none of the information that's in here is off. Okay, all these things seem fine. All right, so I just want to test a couple of things because I'm looking back at the code we should be typing and what it should look like. And it's throwing an error. Obviously, at this point, I assigned something to article, right? All right, so that's in there. That's fine. And then I assigned something to category. And you can see that that is in memory. It's there. So that's not an issue. I am going to look at the database because I do want to see, okay, programming has an ID of 1. Okay, so I don't see any issues there. articles category. All right, this doesn't have anything in it yet. And I think that might be kind of where they're walking us here right now. So, all right, see what we're missing here? That's why the devil's in the details. That's a good highlight. Reload. All right, let's reload the console. Reload the console. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat those commands I typed. So I'm going to repopulate article with article.last. So that worked just fine. And then I'm going to up arrow again, and I'm going to populate category with category find by name. We can test to see if it works. So if I say article, say category, those are both good. After the command was this one. This is where it broke, right? So let's see if it breaks again. This time it worked. So really, I guess the key there was doing the reload. So once we did that reload, it seemed to stick. All right, let's finish up some of these commands here. All right, so the next command is article categories any. So it's checking to see, does it have any categories associated to it? It's a pretty simple command. And of course the answer is true. And then we'll see how many categories we have. That's articles.categories.size. Just one, because that's all we've done so far. A couple more commands. Now notice the reverse syntax here. Category article. So you notice how, like, when we say article singular, categories plural. Now we're doing the converse. We're saying single category pointing to many articles. So that's the many-to-many relationship in the database. So the category for articles, is it empty? False. There are associations there. The size of that is just one, which we already know. And then what this is going to do is it's going to pull back the first of the article's title. All right. So at this point, this is a logical stopping point for us for tonight. We have much more to do in this chapter. This is a long chapter if you guys are figuring that out. So we've gotten this far in the chapter. We still have to go through finding and validations and callbacks. Clearly, we're not going to be able to cover that tonight because it's 10 o'clock already. So this is going to be continued next week. I know that you have due dates coming up this weekend. I am entertaining pushing them back, and I guess I'm not going to specify a date in the video because I may reuse the video at some point in time. But this is a long chapter and a challenging one to get all the commands in and get it to work right. Now, I do have pre-existing videos that you guys can follow to get the work in on time. But like I said, I'm considering extending the due date by a little bit so that you have ample time to work through any issues. All right, this video is done right here.